Good evening, class. You did a great job with the questions from the discussion board this week. In fact, far beyond my expectations. So I was really pleased, and I'm happy to answer your questions for you. I'm going to be looking at the screen over here and kind of talking my way through what you said. I've also got all of it written down, or some of it written down, so you can read it or you can watch this. All right, so the first couple of questions fell under what I call credibility. How can you tell if a source is scholarly or non-scholarly? How can I quickly determine whether a source is credible when there's limited information available about the author or the publisher? How can I tell if a source is credible or not? Are there any other important aspects in determining credibility other than the author? So, sorry, there are a few key things you can think about with credibility. Other experts reference that person. They keep coming up in other people's work. You want to see if there is an author. If there's no author to the work, if it's generalized, you might want to say, how do I know where this came from? So typically a good scholarly source has an author. If it's a journal, is it a peer-reviewed journal, meaning experts have weighed in on the value of this particular article, and has there enough time passed for the subject matter to have been reviewed? Just a basic question. Is what this person's saying, is it reasonable? Do you think it's reasonable? You can trust yourself at least to ask yourself, is this reasonable? And the one I mentioned, I think in a couple of lectures, who paid for it? Because information is generally not free. Someone has to spend their time and their energy in finding out things. And typically whoever paid for it kind of wants the answer to be one way or another. So if somebody paid for it, you want to look at it twice. And generally somebody paid for it. So immediately telling whether or not a source is unreliable. Non-peer-reviewed articles. Non-peer-reviewed articles tend to be somebody's opinion, and it can be a well-informed opinion, but there's just no check on it. So you take it with maybe a grain of salt. So I said to you, I immediately tell whether a source is unreliable. I typically distrust any self-help source that requires me to pay a subscription up front to get insights into myself. Maybe I'm not going to just trust you because you just kind of want my money and you're pretty clear about that. Business sites, though, do require payment. You want to join the group and have the in-group information, you got to pay. So money distorts, but it's not absolutely going to make something unreliable. You just have to keep your eyes open. And you know, the kind of real-life decisions you will research where you're going to pay some money for a car, for a house, for a computer, those three things come to mind for me as ones where I'm going to go into it with a little bit more wariness. Okay, contradictions, the next set. What do you do when two sources that you think are reliable contradict each other? Usually, if you're doing research and you find two contradictory sources, you should just say, there are contradictions here. Two reliable sources don't agree with each other. Just say that in your research. You can also say that you lean one way or another and why. It's better to show that there are disagreements than to try to suppress the disagreements. One person mentioned like COVID cures, people proposing irrational things. Even if you think a point of view is really silly, if you know that a lot of people think that, then you should address it. My own technique is to try to triangulate. I'll see if I can line up 2 or 3 or 4 or more sources. And when I have conflicting information, I look for 5, 6, or 7 sources. So another question is which type? Sorry. When should I use a scholarly source instead of a non-scholarly source? How do you know if a non-scholarly source is okay to use? This is really audience dependent and assignment dependent. You might need to make a case for including some unexpected source. You say, well, typically we wouldn't consult so-and-so, but I think this is valuable. How much is enough? This is an interesting one, and a bunch of people ask this. How much is enough? So this is really a scope of project question. So if you have to include more than 50 sources to answer a question, you are writing a book. So you perhaps should narrow your question. And that's, I think, useful to think, if I really feel like I have to keep adding and adding, maybe I need to narrow my question. Okay, I'm going to stop there so you don't have to watch and watch and watch. And then I'm going to pick up with the next question about summarizing. So I'm pausing here.